Good day, I'm Administrator Adam Southgate, and in today's lecture we will be covering the Fey Sphere's wild curses. Imagine for me, if you will, magic that acts like a virus, self-sustaining, self-perpetuating, and invisible to the naked eye. You can see the results of this magic, but not the magic itself as it moves through the world, affecting all it runs into. And just like a virus, some are more infectious than others. But what is it that causes this magic to exist, and what causes it to strike? For most affected, they will never know, and those unlucky enough to survive may wish they didn't. This is what today's topic confronts us with, but before I get ahead of myself, I'd like to mention the Order's Discord to help keep our hunters organized. It's broken up into different roles based on rank and which Earth you belong to, if any. Along with this, we conduct our contracts through this system, so I hope to see you all there. Now, onto our Hunters update. Firstly, we do have some news on the Metal People, or Homo Metallics. Being nicknamed as simply the Metallics by many in the research community, the majority of those saved from the Iron Dawn have now thankfully calmed down for the most part. Dr. Pinocchio has had some luck in solving their fundamental issue, that being the lack of sight, sound, or any other sensation. The solution was to use a modified bardic transcriber that instead of receiving information, instead transmits it directly to the person it's linked to. This was thought to be impossible, as wisp crystals can only integrate with organic material. However, due to the doctor's research into this field previously, a solution was ready to go. He'd been attempting to get around this issue so that metal autonomous prosthetics could be created instead of the wooden ones we use currently, his solution being that of what he calls a flesh circuit bypass. The issue he found with the original project was that the amount of flesh between the wisp crystal and the prosthetic would need to be far too big to be practical, but in the case of the metallics and the modified bardic transcriber, this was less of an issue. So far, only one has been created using a cow's intestine that has been soaked in preserving agents. This intestine is in direct contact with the subject's back and the crystal inside the transcriber. It allows signals to be sent from the transcriber to the metallic, giving in this case him both hearing and sight. There are some drawbacks to this system, however. Firstly, the one linked to the transcriber sees from its perspective. This gives them an almost third-person view, which takes some adjustment. Secondly, the audio sent to the person has been described as tinny and almost painful at certain volumes. Thirdly, as the voice also comes from the transcriber, what is created is a synthesized voice, not their own, which the subject described as disquieting. Finally, the system doesn't help with any other sense, but the subject did express a great amount of gratitude for what has already been accomplished. Our next step is the creation of 300 more of these devices so that each of the metallics can be outfitted with one. Moving on, with the Iron Dawn event behind us, now we fall to the work of piecing together what this will mean going forward. The Iron Dawn, in fact the entire Iron Cult within Wales, has been completely extinguished, a fact also known by the other Iron Cult members within the wider UK. We have already received reports of early forays by these groups into Wales looking for areas to set up their own new chapters. While we can for a time keep on top of the smaller collections of Iron Dawn members, eventually one will manage to establish themselves within Wales yet again. As for the non-metallic civilians, those without any augments have had the entire event recontextualized, while those with the Iron Dawn augments will need more time before they can re-enter society. The issue is that of the lot, around 40% are reliant on their alterations to live, and so will never be able to re-enter normal society, while the other 60% will require extensive surgeries before being released, so it will be a slow and painful process. As for the proto-avatar herself, also known as Arwen, a name chosen for her as she seems to have no memory of who she was. She has now woken up, however, as stated, has no memory of who she was before her partial transformation. Along with this sad news, Arwen has seemed to have regressed to that of a child, with no memory of language or basic social structure. She has the capacity to be highly dangerous, and so keeping her within an institute such as Hidden Valley is out of the question. Instead, we will be attempting to teach her all that she has lost within one of the Order offices, where she will live on site. Before we can define a wild curse, we must first define a standard one. Curses are living ribbons of Fae magic that are designed and created by the Fae themselves. They will typically have a set lifespan based on the amount of energy the original creator puts into them, as well as a set number of people the curse can affect before dissipating. Along with this, they will also require a strict trigger to activate based around whatever the Fae was attempting to achieve. As an example, a Fae takes a disliking to littering, so creates a curse as a lesson to mankind. They put enough magic into it to last 2 weeks, lock it to affect no more than 10 people, and set the trigger to be a human dropping rubbish upon the ground. Now, here's where I must state that this is only how we perceive it. To the Fae themselves, the process is far closer to poetry than coding, and has millions of rules, and rules that can be broken or bent if others are in play. The true complexity is frankly beyond human understanding. A wild curse is one where, due to negligence, one or more of the limiting factors has broken. Typically, it will start because the being who created it linked its magic to the Fae sphere itself, rather than giving it a set amount. In most cases, their goal was to create a curse that would persist long term. However, the issue is that over enough time, and based on the skill of the one who created it, the other rules will break down. If the link to the sphere breaks, this is no issue, as the curse will dissipate, but if one of the other two does, it can be a calamity. If there is no set number to how many people the curse can affect, it will continue to do so until the behavior it was created to punish stops. If the third breaks, then the curse infects people indiscriminately. So, if a curse is one of those connected to the Fae sphere and no longer has a set target or a limit to how many people it can affect, the problem can quickly spiral out of control. Lastly, the curses themselves are invisible to the naked eye, moving freely throughout our world. They do not appear to possess a mind and need to be in close proximity to a victim in order to trigger their very visible effect. Interestingly, to the Fae themselves, the creation of such a curse is seen as taboo. The reasons for this are purely self-interested in nature, however, it is fascinating nonetheless. It all comes down to Fae psychology, if such a concept is applicable. The Fae view our world in terms of a sandpit occupied by ants. We are the ants in this analogy, and while it's okay to pull the legs off some and burn others, destroying the nest would end the game. Fae are by their most fundamental nature childlike, but with power far beyond human achievement. They seek novelty above all else, and become quickly bored with any activity that requires too much focus. The taboo of wild curses is because, firstly, they could effectively wipe out mankind, ending the game, and secondly, could expose the Fae sphere enough that breaches become so common from said sphere that our world effectively becomes a second Fae sphere, ruining the novelty. But alas, we are talking about Fae, so there is no organized punishment for those who break this suggestion of a rule. Rather, the perpetrator is mocked and ostracized. Hags have their own oddly specific plans that they are attempting to achieve, and as such often come into conflict with the other Fae by taking actions that could end the game. This is why hags are shunned by most, if not all, Fae. So today I'm going to give you 3 examples of wild curses. The first to have, as all wild curses do, infinite energy from the phase sphere, but still have their targeting intact, though not their set amount. The last one, while now thankfully destroyed thanks to a deal made with a hag, had no targeting, no limit, and infinite energy, and so was extremely problematic. Curse 1. Willow's disease. Origin. The earliest known record of Willow's disease dates back to the early 18th century and actually began within a small farming village within southern England. The village was built along the River Thames, rather away west from London, and was sadly the victim of a fay that spilled over the border. Trigger. The trigger for this curse involves the accidental or deliberate killing of a hedgehog. This can be done directly or indirectly through habitat loss, and of course the curse itself must be present at the time. Symptoms. Stage 1. After the killing of the hedgehog, which again the victim may be completely unaware of doing, the curse will cast its anomalous effect on them, then moving on. It typically takes a few days, but eventually the victim will begin to suffer mild stabbing pains within their lower torso that will slowly increase in severity. Stage 2. The pain will reach a point that is difficult to describe, often leaving the victim screaming to the point of permanently damaging their own vocal cords. What's more, the pain will begin to move, almost at random, within their lower torso, the pain worsening with the movement. It is at this stage, and often misinterpreted as being due to the pain, that the victim will stop eating and drinking. Stage 3. The pain, though still present, will decrease to a bearable level, however, will still move around in the area of the intestines. The victim's appetite will not return. One day, a sharpened quill will be stabbed from the inside of the body to the outside and will be worked at the skin covering the stomach until a rectangular hole is made. The intestines and every other organ that is typically present at this location will be gone, replaced with a live hedgehog accompanied by 18th century rural furniture. Life with the curse. The hedgehog itself will be sentient and able to speak human language, and are typically rather polite and friendly, especially to their host. They will state that they have no wish to leave their home and are quite comfortable within it. And as we found out, this is for the best, as if the hedgehog leaves the body, it becomes a mundane hedgehog while the host person dies. The curse appears to link the two together in some rather fascinating ways. The human host lacking the organs for digestion cannot eat, but is sustained by the health of the hedgehog. As long as the host keeps the hedgehog fed and their thirst quenched, both will survive. The anomalous hedgehogs themselves will only eat a human-like diet, balking at the animal's typical diet. They also have a universal fondness for tea. For the host themselves, movement becomes perilous, as the hedgehog's quills can stab into the inner walls of the body, which they will immediately apologize for. Along with this, too fast a movement has the threat of throwing the hedgehog from the body, killing the host. Sleep has often been put forward as the most difficult aspect of this affliction, as any horizontal positioning will upset the hedgehog, throwing their furniture into disarray. Beyond this, there is also the threat of the hedgehog falling out during movement in one's sleep, so many with this issue strap themselves into an upright position before attempting to sleep. Finally, the victims of this curse no longer create their own body heat, being reliant on the hedgehog stove for this purpose. They still live without it being lit, however, they will decrease to ambient temperature and find it difficult to move. Curse 2. Manifested Addiction Syndrome, or MAS. Origin. At least to our best knowledge, beginning in the 1980s, Cardiff, MAS quickly became uncomfortably prevalent in the city. It was only after it naturally drifted into the countryside that case numbers began to drop. Trigger. The trigger for MAS is somewhat less specific, requiring only that a person near the curse itself feed an addiction at the expense of others or their own fundamental needs. Symptoms. The affliction given by the curse creates a manifestation of the victim's addiction, typically in the form of a hodgepodge of different animal parts stuck together. This creature is always linked to the victim, literally always having at least one piece of their body under the victim's skin. It can, in fact, fully hide itself beneath the victim's skin, warping itself into an almost tattoo. This entering and leaving of the skin is described as extremely painful on the level of being flayed, and the victim has no control over it. From the moment the creature is created, the victim will no longer be able to gain any enjoyment from their addiction, nor will they feel any effect from withdrawal. The issue is that the creature attached to them does. The victim must feed the addiction to keep the creature calm and docile. If left without, the creature will become agitated and physically aggressive to the victim. Life with the curse. Life with these literal manifestations of addiction is not easy, to say the least. Whatever the cause of the original addiction no longer has any direct effect on the person, meaning that it quickly becomes a depressing chore, only serving to remind the victim of what once had a hold over them. The creature itself, when sated, has been described as almost pet-like, happily sitting upon the victim's shoulder or as a tattoo beneath the skin. However, when the creature is in withdrawal, it is another matter. They have been recorded diving in and out of beneath a victim's skin specifically to cause some pain, grabbing nearby objects and hitting them against their host, and even simply biting and scratching at them. Curse 3. The Smiling Chorus. Origin unknown. Trigger unknown. Symptoms. The teeth within the victim's mouth will become separate living entities with their own face and digestive system, though still rooted inside the mouth. When the victim eats, each individual tooth will also eat, catching the chewed food within their own mouths. They are by no means sentient creatures, being on the level of simple bivalves. They eat when food is present and sit there when it is not, for the most part, as if not fed regularly enough, they will attempt to eat the gums of the victim, causing bleeding and a great amount of discomfort. Life with the curse. The curse itself no longer exists, but we do have one surviving written account by one of the last known people to possess this affliction. The famine was difficult for everyone. Mary lost 3 of her children, God rest their souls. For me, apart from the constant ache of hunger, the main issue was my special problem. It was difficult to hide with the amount of blood leaking from my mouth. It reached a point where I was ready to use Andrew's pliers to just rip them out, pain be damned. If the others had discovered, the best outcome would have been that I was shunned into becoming a cursed hermit, while the worst, well, probably I would have been tortured and eventually executed as a witch or worshipper of the devil. But we made it. We made it to summer, and the harvest was good, so I can quiet the demons that plague me once again. Possible end of the world scenario. While the affliction created by the curse was not overly destructive in and of itself, the main issue was that its original limiter and trigger were not present, leaving the curse to affect people indiscriminately. If not stopped with the use of a deal with a hag, it could have become as prevalent as the common cold. The main issue with this is how much this would have exposed the spheres, specifically the face sphere, to the world, greatly increasing the amount of breaches from the sphere and where in the world those breaches could happen. It is true that the results of some curses can be hidden and a normal life can be had for the victims. However, for others, hiding the results of their curse is not tenable. Due to this, a facility was needed within Wales to house these individuals, while also providing them with round-the-clock care. The Hidden Valley Sanatorium was the solution. The Hidden Valley was once one of the many valleys within South Wales. However, due to an unknown anomalous event, this specific valley became shrouded. It was only discovered by ourselves due to a moment of pure chance. You see, typically the boundary of the valley acts as a recontextualizing field, diverting you around it rather than into it. This effect is rather powerful, even affecting photographs, which, when viewed, will appear as if what is on the other end of the valley has been pulled forward. The hunter who originally found the valley only did so due to having an Angelus Pluma equipped while he was passing it, allowing him to see through the effect. As it turns out, once inside the effect, it is no longer present, meaning that you can live rather happily without equipment inside. There was a community of around 400 rather inbred individuals living within the valley. However, after they were cleared out, the sanatorium was built. While originally this was rather an unethical place attempting to cure its patients through some rather barbaric means, today it is more of a hospice facility for those too affected by the spheres to return to normal life, but not so much that life isn't possible. The facility houses each resident within their own fully furnished flat, providing 3 meals a day via the canteen, though each resident does have their own small kitchen and has an on-site workshop to create equipment to make the residents' lives easier. Belted straps attached to a specialized bed to allow those with Willow's disease to sleep while sat upright, and the like. Along with this, the residents can request any item from the outside to be brought in at a budget of £200 per resident per month, though the items cannot be used to contact anyone outside the valley. The facility also now has a modern gym with equipment modified to the residents' specific needs, allowing them to stay healthy despite their conditions. It is only one of many facilities around the world that caters to these kinds of patients and provides specialized care for those staying within. Hidden Valley has a maximum occupancy of 300, while other facilities can have higher or lower. While you yourselves cannot directly deal with wild curses, you will be asked to bring in those affected by them. This can be a rather difficult and emotionally taxing job to complete, as you will need to convince the victim to come with you, willing or not, and will need to facilitate the recontextualization of their disappearance for their loved ones. You'll need to act as 2 teams for these jobs, the first to transport the curse-affected person, and the second to keep the family in place while we at the Order set up, bring and use the equipment for recontextualization. Many older hunters have expressed that MMB should always be used during such contracts, as the emotional wear of tearing someone from their family is far too painful, even if it needs to be done. The most effective approach that has been found so far is to simply tell all involved the truth, at least about the Fey sphere, calmly explaining that with everyone who sees the afflicted person's condition, the chances of this happening to others increases. Also, telling the one affected that by leaving with yourself, they will be protecting the ones they love has proven to help greatly, as they will already be far more open to the fantastical simply based on the condition they are now cursed with. Even with this, however, as stated, there will be times when the affected person or their family will be unwilling to cooperate. In these cases, only non-lethal force is allowed, and anything other than this will be punished to the fullest extent. The people have already gone through extensive trauma due to the curse. We will not add to this by putting them in a situation where they have to see their families die. I find wild curses interesting, as it's difficult to define what they actually are. They move, they eat, in terms of the energy they draw from the Fey sphere, and depending on the curse, they can reproduce. All key factors in determining if something is alive. However, each of these factors also apply to fire, so more stringent criteria is probably needed. Either way, Alive or not, their effect on our world is palpable, ruining the lives of those they infect. We do of course do all we can for those people and their quality of life, however it is never enough, as the feeling of being quarantined from mankind is a crushing one. But that will be all for today. Please like, comment and subscribe. With Arthur's might and Merlin's wisdom, thank you.